Former President Donald Trump recently made headlines with comments that angered many across the Atlantic. His words, delivered with characteristic bluntness, reignited debates about the strength and unity of the NATO alliance and the role of the United States within it. He suggested that during the war in Afghanistan, some NATO allies, including the UK, stayed a little back from the front lines, implying a lack of commitment compared to American troops. This statement was interpreted by many as a direct challenge to the dedication and bravery of America's closest partners. These remarks struck a nerve, especially among veterans and families who lost loved ones in the conflict. For them, the sacrifices made were deeply personal, and any suggestion that their efforts were less than wholehearted felt like a painful slight. The war in Afghanistan was a joint effort, built on shared sacrifice and mutual defense. Troops from dozens of countries served side by side, facing the same dangers and enduring the same hardships, regardless of their flag. To question the bravery of a key ally like the UK was seen as a serious misrepresentation of history. British forces, in particular, suffered significant casualties and played a crucial role in some of the most dangerous operations of the war. Trump's comments quickly became a major news story, sparking outrage among those who felt their service was being diminished. Social media lit up with responses from veterans, politicians, and ordinary citizens, many of whom demanded a retraction or apology. For both Americans and Britons, Afghanistan was a defining conflict, one that demanded immense sacrifice from all involved. The bonds formed in battle and the losses endured created a sense of shared history that cannot be easily dismissed. When a leader questions the courage of allies, it threatens the trust and respect that international partnerships rely on. Such remarks can have lasting consequences, not just for diplomatic relations, but for the morale of those who serve and the unity of alliances built over decades. The UK's response to Trump's remarks was swift, vocal, and united in outrage. Across the country, the comments sparked a wave of disbelief and indignation, with many Britons feeling that a line had been crossed. The story dominated headlines, and the public mood was one of deep frustration and anger. Prime Minister Keir Starmer called the comments appalling, echoing a national sense of injustice. He emphasized that the UK's armed forces have always stood shoulder to shoulder with their allies, and that any attempt to diminish their sacrifice would not be tolerated. Starmer's words resonated with citizens and politicians alike, uniting the country in defense of its military. Veterans, advocates, and politicians from all parties condemned the remarks, describing them as a grave insult to British troops. Many pointed out the long history of British involvement in international conflicts and the heavy price paid by service members and their families. The sense of betrayal was palpable, cutting across political divides. Conservative MP Steve Baker voiced the anger of many, saying Trump's words dismissed the dangerous work of UK soldiers, especially special forces. He stressed that British troops have repeatedly put themselves in harm's way, often alongside American forces, and that their bravery should never be questioned or minimized. The suggestion that British troops stayed back was seen as a complete fabrication, ignoring years of frontline combat and sacrifice. For many, it was a rewriting of history that dishonored the memory of those who had fallen and the courage of those still serving. News outlets and social media filled with stories of British heroism, directly rebutting Trump's claims. Journalists highlighted acts of valor, while veterans and their families shared personal accounts of service and loss. The public conversation became a rallying point for national pride. The incident became more than a diplomatic spat. It challenged the very foundation of the US-UK special relationship. Questions arose about trust, respect, and the future of military cooperation between the two nations. Many in Britain demanded a correction and an apology, questioning how their closest ally truly viewed their contributions. Protests erupted outside the US Embassy, and calls for accountability grew louder with each passing day. The controversy forced a national reckoning over respect, sacrifice, and the value of partnership. For the UK, it was a moment to reaffirm the honor of its armed forces and to demand the recognition they deserve from friends and allies alike. To understand the depth of the offense, consider the facts. Over 3,500 NATO service members died in Afghanistan, including 457 from the UK. British forces were second only to the US in troop numbers and often served in the most dangerous regions like Helmand Province. The idea that they held back is contradicted by the high number of casualties they suffered. Each loss represents a family in mourning and a nation grieving. For veterans and families, Trump's remarks felt like a dismissal of real sacrifice. The shared experience of loss binds allies together, questioning that sacrifice damages trust. The casualty figures are a permanent record of the UK's commitment, standing in direct opposition to any narrative of hesitation. These numbers are not just statistics, they are a testament to courage and shared sacrifice. The controversy reached a boiling point on BBC's Newsnight, the flagship current affairs program known for its tough interviews and high-stakes debates. On this particular evening, the nation tuned in with anticipation, aware that tensions were running high after days of heated headlines and political fallout. Conservative MP Steve Baker and former U.S. Ambassador Carla Sands faced off under the studio lights. Baker, representing the British government's position, laid out the facts of British involvement in NATO and the sacrifices made by UK forces over the years. He demanded a direct apology for what he called a fundamental mischaracterization of the UK's role, his voice steady, but his frustration clear. Sands, meanwhile, tried to reframe Trump's comments, suggesting that the former president was speaking about NATO's overall effectiveness, not singling out the UK specifically. She pointed to operational caveats by other allies, arguing that Trump's criticism was aimed at broader alliance issues. Sands attempted to shift the focus to the need for all NATO members to contribute more, highlighting ongoing debates about defense spending and shared responsibilities. But Baker and the host pressed her relentlessly on Trump's specific words, refusing to let the issue be generalized. The debate quickly became a point-by-point dissection of Trump's statement versus the historical record, with facts and figures flying across the studio. Sands struggled to justify the inaccuracy, often pausing as she searched for a convincing response. The pressure in the studio was palpable, and the audience could sense the discomfort as she tried to defend her position. Meanwhile, Baker's controlled fury reflected the anger of many veterans and ordinary citizens who felt their country's contributions were being unfairly dismissed. The tension in the studio captured the essence of the controversy. This was more than a political spat. It was about national pride, historical truth, and respect for sacrifice. The exchange highlighted the deep divisions caused by Trump's remarks, exposing rifts not just between politicians, but within the public itself. Viewers at home debated fiercely on social media, echoing the arguments unfolding live on air. It was a live moment that crystallized the pain and frustration felt by many in the UK, leaving a lasting impression on all who witnessed it. On Newsnight, Carla Sands faced tough questions about Trump's factually incorrect and offensive comments. She argued that as president, Trump couldn't know every detail about every ally, framing the remarks as a mistake, not malice. This defense was met with skepticism. Afghanistan was a central issue, and the UK's sacrifices were well known. Sands insisted Trump's real frustration was with NATO countries not meeting financial commitments, not with soldiers on the ground. She tried to pivot the conversation from battlefield bravery to budgetary contributions. Critics saw this as making excuses, not addressing the harm caused. The argument that Trump was too busy to know the facts only deepened the sense of insult. The attempt to shift focus failed to address the core complaint, the dishonoring of fallen soldiers. Under pressure, Carla Sands offered an apology on Trump's behalf for the offense caused. However, her wording was careful. "I'm sorry that people took offense and assumed it was about the UK." This non-apology placed responsibility on those offended, not on Trump himself. For many, it wasn't enough. Veterans and families wanted a direct retraction from Trump. Still, the moment was notable. Even a Trump ally recognized the damage done. Sands' apology was a diplomatic attempt to de-escalate, but it lacked the sincerity many sought. The incident showed the difficult position Trump's supporters face when defending his controversial statements. For true reconciliation, many believed only Trump's own words would suffice. Sands claimed that no U.S. president had honored the military more than Trump, portraying him as deeply committed to soldiers' welfare. She described him as a peace president, arguing his tough rhetoric was meant to push allies to take more responsibility and avoid future wars. Sands referenced a national security document as evidence of Trump's respect for allies. She tried to separate his official policies from his off-the-cuff remarks. Critics, however, pointed to Trump's history of questioning alliances and making isolationist moves. Many found it hard to reconcile Sands's portrayal with Trump's public record. Her defense was met with skepticism, as actions and words often told a different story. As Newsnight wrapped up, the question remained, would Trump apologize himself? Host Matt Chorley asked if a personal apology wouldn't be better for repairing the damage. Sands refused to say Trump should apologize, insisting she didn't speak for him. This reinforced the perception that Trump rarely admits mistakes or apologizes. For supporters, this is seen as strength. For critics, it's arrogance. In diplomacy, such refusal can erode trust and leave wounds unhealed. The incident underscored how vital mutual respect is to alliances built on shared sacrifice. Without public respect for each partner's contributions, even the strongest alliances can be shaken.